gonna doing the same thing like we normally do, like we will introduce you and then have a you spoken and then just like regular for the radio show, like we're gonna start with our recording. So further I'm gonna start it, then I'm gonna start ask you some questions.
Okay. Also, I need to put in a plug for the Military Business Center. So if one of your questions, like the beginning is, what is the Military Business Center, the North, so I can.
Yeah, you're gonna talk about that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Right,
Using some hub roles. We together we have invite the North Carolina Military Center. We're gonna mention her and invite her to join us shortly. We have a couple of things we need to announce. Together in Chinese, the class gonna be start pretty soon. And the PPP and IDOL round 2 is being started too. So if you have a round 1 last year, you should look into the PPP round 2 and talk to your CPA and prepare the proper document with your lender. And the IDOL round 2 will be a little bit slightly different. You had to wait for the SBA to contact you. You need a further documentation to do the IDOL round 2. And we have a single cloud promotion for the Valentine. And how do you meet your husband? How do you meet your wife? The website information is on our website, is obogassi.wordpress.com, and our phone number 919-793-3078. Our email address is obogassimanagement@gmail.com. Let's welcome Laura. Laura, hi. We have been talking to about your cyber chat. The first section was very impressive. So why don't you introduce your North Carolina Military Center and yourself with our audience?
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate you attending the cyber chats. My name is, I'm a business development professional with the North Carolina Military Business Center. I'm supposed to be in an office at Wake Tech Community College in the RTP area, but because of COVID, I've been working from home since March. But the North Carolina Military Business Center is a statewide business development and technology transition entity of the North Carolina Community College system. And our headquarters are at Fayetteville Technical Community College down in Fayetteville. And our mission is basically to bring more federal business into the state of North Carolina to kind of get what we consider to be our fair share of the federal contracts that go out nationwide. We'd like more of them here in North Carolina. And so one of the ways that we do that is try to help companies navigate the barriers that are in place to either getting into the federal government or staying in the federal government. And that's kind of where I come in terms of compliance to the new cybersecurity regulations such as CMMC, and trying to help companies navigate that so that they'll stay in the defense industrial base and not be afraid to get into it because it's such an onerous regulation.
So so that your position would be like help a lot of company to transition to the DoD contract.
Right. We try to. We have a lot of consultants. Development professionals, and we have different people who are in a different like in construction or
right.
All these different areas that can help you. But one of the things that we do is help bring companies into the federal marketplace.
Okay, and just before we go into the CMMC, we just kind of want to see is if a company is kind of brand new, they want to go into the DoD's military business, what would you suggest them to do?
Well, the first thing they need to do is go to our website. It's CMMC.us, and you can look on the About Us section, and you find the business development professional that is in your region. We have several regions all over, like mine. I have the RTP area all the way north to the Virginia line. So I've got 11 counties, and those are folks that I help actually get into the federal marketplace and provide consulting. If you are already in the federal marketplace and you need help with a particular industry, medical, construction, textiles. We also have subject matter experts on staff, and you can find all of that in the Contact Us section of our website. And you can see who you need to contact and just reach out to us, and we'll help you. And if we don't think we can, we will send you to the person in our organization that can help you.
Okay, so let's go down to the business. So I have write down several questions for us to ask her. So we'll be able to have Laura to go through them. And let's start with the questionnaire and Q&A here. What is the CMMC and how was it developed?
So CMMC is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. And it's a new requirement that the DoD started working on a couple of years ago, because the current cybersecurity regulations in the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement weren't strong enough, and companies were not complying. And so they developed this, through Johns Hopkins and Carnegie Mellon, to put together this model. And it's sort of it's a compliance model, a quality management system with sort of a maturity model inside of it, so that companies can grow their cybersecurity systems and not just put a bunch of controls in place and move on. It's an actual program that they put in place, and that the intent is to make us more secure in this country, that, you know, our national security is protected when we can protect our data.
When we mentioned about CMMC, I have talked about in my program earlier, and we mentioned about the cybersecurity, but isn't this a job is more like, if it's a student from the IT department, do you think they be able to get onto the CMMC qualification, you think? If they were thinking, the small business company was saying, oh, can I have an IT student to work on it? What we suggest them to do?
Well, if you're an IT company, and particularly if you're one supporting a company that's in the defense industrial base, yeah, you need to learn CMMC, because it's a lot more than just your, the technical data. And that's one of the problems that we have seen with our clients, is that their IT companies aren't equipped to help them with compliance, which is what we're trying to do, is sort of fill that compliance gap so that the IT companies, as they learn it, can fill that in. But right now they can just provide the technical expertise. But there's a whole ecosystem surrounding CMMC. Companies can apply to be auditors or assessors, is what they're calling them. You can apply to be just a consultant. Can apply to publish the training. You can apply to do the training. The ecosystem has not been fully fleshed out. So right now, the accreditation body that runs CMMC, through a memorandum of agreement with the DoD, is providing the training. Eventually, when the ecosystem gets developed, all that training will be sent to companies and organizations, educational institutions who will provide that training. And IT and cyber professionals need to take that, because that is the way of the future. This is not going away, and it's only to get bigger.
And you mentioned about, because this is not just for the IT or cybersecurity, and also compliance. So it had to be like everybody come together as a joint. It's not, cannot be just one part.
Right. And so right. And it's very difficult to find someone who is technically competent in IT and cyber, and understands quality management systems and maturity models. And has the business acumen to pull all that together. So that's very difficult to find, and it's going to take a while for people to get there. And that is really not part of an IT cyber curriculum. So we're working with Fayetteville Tech at the moment to sort of try to get some of those things into that curriculum, so we can sort of position North Carolina to be sort of ahead of other states, in getting this system developed.
Okay. Let me go down the second question. How does CMMC different from the previous cybersecurity regulation?
Well, if you look at the DFARS 252, 204, 7012 was the original one to protect controlled unclassified information. It allowed companies to self-attest. and just say, yes, I'm compliant. And so by virtue of accepting a contract from the Department of Defense or from a prime, you are self-attesting and saying implicitly, yes, I am compliant to all 110 controls in this special publication 800-171. So companies were saying they were when they weren't, and you really can't blame them for that, because it says specifically in the clause that they will not be audited. No one's going to look at them, and they know that the cost of compliance can be very steep, especially for really small companies. So that's why we have CMMC. It's, you have to assess every single company that has to be certified to a level of CMMC, levels 1 through 5, has to actually get an in-person audit. So there's teeth to this particular regulation.
Okay, the second one, this one. What do we need the CMMC? I'm sure you have a lot of want to talk about.
What, I'm sorry, say
what does we need the CMMC? You mentioned about that in the class as well. CMMC, why do we need it?
Why do we need it? Well, we need it mostly to protect national security. Because if companies are not compliant with the previous regulations, then, we're setting ourselves up for our adversaries to get our data, and not only just get our data, but to get into our supply chains and disrupt it. We saw that with the election, with Russia trying to disrupt, not so much take our information, but disrupt, create chaos in this country. And that's one of the things that they're doing. So, we have to have this for national security. It's absolutely non-negotiable. We have to have it.
And in the class, you mentioned about there was for your point of view is you feel like you obligate to secure the first line of the country's security. That's why you mentioned about that.
Yes, from a patriotic point, especially if you're in the DoD supply chain, it is your duty to protect this data. The Department of Defense estimates that 78 to 80% of their data resides on contractor networks. That's a lot of data for our adversaries to go after. And if we're not protecting it, then we're not doing our part as good American citizens to protect national security and keep our adversaries from getting our data and disrupting our supply chain.
Indeed. So who's affected by the CMMC?
So at this point, it's only defense contractors. So anyone who touches controlled unclassified information or federal contract information, it's very difficult to determine that.
Right.
But any company in the DoD supply chain that touches that data will eventually have to be certified to a level of CMMC. If you touch federal contract information only, you're level 1, which equates to about 17 controls and about $3,000 for an assessment. If you touch CUI, then at minimum, you're going to be level 3 in CMMC, which equates to 130 controls and upwards of $50K or more for an assessment. So, and what they anticipate happening with CMMC is that it will be federal agency-wide, meaning EPA, National Institute of Environmental Health and Safety, Department of Transportation, everybody is going to embrace CMMC. So now is the time for everyone to get started. They also anticipate it going international.
Indeed. And I have I just want to ask you to see the classify if you have known that is the FBO for people to get into the data and to get the IP or IPO, something like that. Would that data from FBO right now as classified as CMMC level, or it's still not yet? Are you familiar with that? It's called solicitation.
At this point, CMMC really is not implemented.
Okay, so that is okay for now.
Yeah. Okay. And CMMC is rolling out over a 5-year period. They anticipate 15 contracts this year to affect about 1,500 companies. in the supply chain. The following fiscal year, there will be even more until I think 2025.
Right.
100% of the contracts that involve data that needs to be protected will have that in the contract.
So you think that right now the FBO information for solicitation for the public to view is still not in that level yet?
Well, you know, if you're looking at what's in FBO and now it's
yeah,
it's, you know, some of that information probably shouldn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's something
yeah,
very level in. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
We tend to, in an attempt to be transparent, we tend to provide more information than we should. I think what we will see as time goes by is looking at things like Beta SAM, saying, you know what, there's too much information in this solicitation that someone could get who shouldn't. So I would expect, and that's an awareness thing, and I think how long it takes to change a culture to where everyone's aware. I think as time goes by, there will be more awareness, and you will see less specific information in a lot of these solicitations required to prove that you're a certain level in order to even access that information.
Yeah, it's just like GSA. I think GSA is a level up because the qualification process before you can go into it. So that's what I'm thinking. FBO should be maybe sometime they will be upgrading to CMMC qualification.
Well, I think that's a great question. I think you're very much right about that at some point that's going to have to change.
Right, because right now it's like everybody can just log on and then see everything.
Yeah. There's really no filtering.
There's no barrier. So what is the CMMC rollout timeline you mentioned about that?
Right now, 15 contracts in FY 2021, and by I think it's October of 2025 going forward, after 100% of the contracts that have to do with the data that's protected will have CMMC at some level in that contract. So we have two things going at once at this point. We have the new DFARS interim rule, and that will go away in October 2025.
Oh, okay.
100% CMMC.
Okay. So who manages the CMMC? Who manages?
It's called an accreditation body, and it is people from the industry, a lot of training companies, a lot of cyber companies, and they are managing the ecosystem. So when Carnegie Mellon and Johns Hopkins put together, the DoD approved it, but the DoD doesn't want to run that. They need someone else, and so they had a contract with this organization. They're a 501c3. They will manage the ecosystem, and what the intent is to have a body of knowledge. For those who've heard of PMBOK and BABOK and those others, it will be a body of knowledge to disseminate, because as we all know, the world of cybersecurity changes pretty much by the minute. And so I'm sure that as time goes by, all of regulations will have to change a bit to satisfy the requirements needed to fend off our adversaries.
And what is the future of CMMC?
So what we think with CMMC is that, obviously we think it's going to go federal agency wide. Now, maybe not in the form it's in. I'm sure there will be changes as this group of companies goes through CMMC. It's called a pilot program for a reason. You're going to see what works and what doesn't. There are changes. And then I think once we kind of settle on a baseline for CMMC, it will go federal agency wide. It's already, they think, going to be in STARS 3 in a couple of other contracts. So that's not just DoD. STARS spans other federal agencies. And then the big thing is that they expect it to become an international standard, much like an ISO 9001 or 27001 or whatever. The accreditation body is already speaking with Canada, Israel, and the United Kingdom about the possibility of pulling this all together. And it really makes sense if you think about it, because every country or region has its own data protection
Yeah.
regulation. Like in the EU, they have the
Mm-hmm.
GDPR.
Right.
California even has one that's different.
Mm-hmm.
There's one in Australia, there's one everywhere.
Right.
And so for companies that are multinational, it's next to impossible to navigate that. How do you comply with GDPR, CMMC, the Australian one, on and on. So we need really an international standard. And that is the hope that this will go international. And if it does, it's going to apply, to commercial contracts.
I see.
Not just federal.
Right. But so right now I think we have a lot of information that was very new to everyone. So what would you suggest? Because minority companies, small business women owner or renters, they gotta be very cautious with CMMC like we have been discussed about. What would you suggest them to ease them up a little bit?
Well, I think that there's a lot of keys to this thing. We're just sort of finding out some of the nuance behind it. One of the things, if you are a small company and you are a subcontractor or supplier to a larger company, is that you really have to collaborate with them and make sure that what they're flowing down in your contract makes sense.
Right.
So just because a prime contractor touches controlled unclassified information and needs to be CMMC level 3 does not mean that their supply chain needs to be that same level, because it's very expensive to get to that level.
Right.
So this is going to really require an unprecedented amount of collaboration of members of a supply chain to figure out what data does really need to be down and what doesn't. And the prime contractors are really going to have to take a look at that, because if they try to flow down like a level 3,
Right.
they're going to find they don't have a supply chain.
Right.
Because
But they
many
can
of
do
these
it.
small companies simply cannot do that.
Right.
So it's going to take a lot of collaboration, a little bit of pushback. If it's a contract and you don't need to touch that data, you're going to have to push back with your prime and say, look, no, I don't need to see that data. Don't flow it down to me. I can do my job just fine without it. And that's going to be key, I think, to a lot of the smaller companies to staying in business.
Right.
Especially if the majority of your revenue portfolio depends on the DoD, then you're going to have to push back. Otherwise, you're going to go out of business.
Right.
So I would really encourage small companies to reach out to the military business.
Right.
We are there to help you. I'm currently working with 5 minority-owned or woman-owned startups.
Okay.
And that's where my heart is.
Okay.
And I will do whatever I can do to help, especially in the realm of cybersecurity, but also just navigating, this maze that is DoD contracting or federal contracting. So there is help out there. We are state funded, which means your taxpayer dollars are paying for us. So take advantage of that. There is no reason to struggle. There just isn't. Please don't struggle. Call us and we will help you.
You did mention you are majority is North Carolina, but because our radio station is applied to all different states, so but you say they can still join your cyber chat to get the
cyber chats are open to whomever would like to be on them, and we would encourage that. As far as counseling goes, though, from our organization, companies need to be in North Carolina,
right?
Or at least have a significant presence here. Your headquarters doesn't necessarily have to be here, but you need to have a significant presence. The reason for that is because we are state funded.
Right.
The state doesn't want us out helping other states at the expense of our local ones. But I will tell the companies in North Carolina that as far as we know, there is other state trying to coordinate this effort. The Military Business Center has convened a committee, Cybersecurity Coordinating Committee, with state agencies and educational institutes all across the state. We are not aware of any other state that's doing that.
Okay.
So we are at companies in North Carolina have an advantage, and you need to take full advantage of that, because we are trying to make sure that when the DoD is looking for companies that are certified
Mhm.
to a CMMC level,
Right.
that we have stacked the deck with North Carolina companies, and that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, and then you mentioned about this and no one else is doing it. So do you have any other thing of a kind of equivalent kind of agency they can go to in their state? Would you suggest?
Well, in the other states, the first thing they need to do is contact their Procurement Technical Assistance Center, PTAC.
Yeah,
And there are PTACs all over the country, and they are funded through the Defense Logistics Agency in part.
okay.
And they have been tasked by the Department of Defense to help companies with cybersecurity compliance, CMMC in particular. So they are a great place to start. And so, yeah, that's the best place for you to start. And then if there are other resources in that particular state, they can direct you to those as well.
Okay, so you said PTAS in the in each state has the
Yes,
awareness of a
and
CMMC as well.
right, each state and region. We have probably 6 PTAC consultants, I think, in North Carolina, something like that. So every state, depending on the need, they're there to help companies with state, local, and federal contracting. So whatever, it depends on the need. Yes, every state has a PTAC office.
Right, right.
So and again, it's funded with your tax dollars. So take advantage of that.
Okay, thank you so much for Laura to give us the CMMC knowledge. Can you give us your website and your contact information again, if whatever you can?
Yes, the Military Business Center is NCMBC.US, and you can access from that website. If you click on cybersecurity changes, you'll find our website that you can use. Anyone can use a resource for developing your cybersecurity compliance program.
Thank you so much, Laura. Nice to hear. So see you next time for your cyber chat.
Thank you,
Okay,
Stephanie.
you have a good day.
I appreciate
you have a good
it.
weekend. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.